Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be working on my Murray riding mower. It's got a 40-inch deck, a Briggs & Stratton motor, 13.5 horsepower. And the riding mower is about 14 years old. It's been running pretty good. It had some repairs in the past, but generally it's pretty good. Until recently, it started where I had to charge the battery every single time I had to mow. So I didn't know if the problem was the old battery or maybe a voltage regulator. Then I found out later on that this model may not have a voltage regulator. I did not see one anywhere. So I went ahead and replaced the battery. And once I put the battery in there and turned the mower on, it just did not make a sound. It would not crank. There was no clicking. There was nothing going on. So when I found out that it wasn't even clicking, I knew that the problem might be, most likely be an electrical system problem. So this is what we're going to troubleshoot today. One way to check your battery to see if the battery is the problem is by using a multimeter. I will use this one because I broke this one, but I'm going to have it here just to show you where to set it. What you just need to do is you place the probes. Okay, you're going to turn it to DC voltage. Okay, I'm going to set it at 20. And that way, if it reads 12 or a little bit over, that means your battery is good. But I'm going to use this one because this is the one that is working. The voltage, the DC is the little V with the lines on the top. Okay, it's hard to hold a camera and work with one hand. So all you need to do is just check. Put the red on the red and the black on the black, and then you'll get a reading. I've already done this. The battery is brand new, so it reads perfectly fine. But if you get less than 12 volts, that means the battery is either bad. You could either charge it or you could buy and replace it with a new one. So that's how you kind of find out if your battery is the problem. Okay, I got this electrical diagram from the manual on my Murray, and here's your model number right here. And I'm just going to give you tips on how to read this. I am not an expert at reading this, but it did help me locate things that I needed to locate. So if you're looking at this, this will be the front of your mower, and this is the back of the mower where the battery is located at. If you want to find out where your solenoid is at because you don't know where it is, you could go back to your battery and get your red lead, your positive lead, and look, even if you have to bend down and look underneath the mower, check to see where this red wire leads. Once it reaches its end, you'll know that that's where your solenoid is at. Okay, that's one way of finding out where your solenoid is at. Now, you have safety switches that you're going to be checking. And another way of tracing is you have another terminal down here that will tell you where these safety switches are at. So you just follow that wire all the way down and it'll tell you where each switch is at. Okay, so we have one switch here, then the other switch here. Okay, these are where the switches will go. Okay, right here. So I highlighted this so to help me see it better. You have other switches back here on the back of the mower, and it tells you the terminals, what they're hooked up to. Like this switch has a wire that connects to your starter, and this switch will take you to the battery, and it will also show you where your fuse is at. I'm sorry. This is the diagram for your ignition switch, and this is a little legend It tells you, it gives you letters, and I wrote here what the letters represent. You're going to be checking, if you're going to be checking the ignition switch, you're going to be using your multimeter, and you're going to put it on continuity. Also, if you're having a hard time tracing where things are at, you could always start from your ignition switch, and pretty much everything is just connected to that ignition switch. So what you're going to do is you're going to follow the wire, and you're going to see that this wire here is connected to the blade safety switch. So that's another way of doing it too. So you could start here if you see the wires, like here, this orange wire takes you to that, or you could check to see where these wires go. Basically that's it. First, we're going to start testing the solenoid. On this model, it's right below the steering column, and you just remove the 2 screws to that, and there's your solenoid right there. Okay, another way of finding out where your solenoid is, if you don't know where it is by tracing a red wire to your battery. And you could do that by following it, and then wherever it ends, that's where your solenoid is at. I want to point out that there are 2 types of solenoids. There's a 3-pole solenoid, and that's what I have here. And the way you can tell if it's a 3-pole solenoid is because it has 3 terminals. It's got 1, 2, and the 3rd one here. A 4-pole solenoid would have 4 terminals. It'll have 1, 2, 3, and a 4th one here. The 4th one would be a ground screw or connector, and it would have a black wire going up somewhere to a metal part of the riding mower. So that would be the only difference. You have a ground screw here. The 3-pole solenoid is grounded by the metal is on. So if you need to do anything with the grounding on a 3-pole solenoid, you would have to remove the solenoid and clean it if you need to, and check for any grounding problems, any corrosion underneath where the metal is touching it. So that's where you get the grounding on a 3-pole solenoid. Over here you have the battery cable, and that goes to the battery at the back of the mower. And then this cable here, if you open this up, you'll have a fuse. You're going to test that on later on too. So that's where your fuse is at, coming out of this terminal here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to test to see if we are getting any voltage, okay, from the battery cable here to the solenoid. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our multimeter to DC voltage. It's set at 20 volts. And you're going to take your red multimeter probe, and you're going to put it at that first terminal there. And you're going to take your black probe, and you're going to place it on the negative terminal of the battery. Turn on your ignition key and place it at the start position. And you're going to take a reading. Okay, you should be able to get 12 volts. But if you get less than 12 volts, then you need to check for corrosion and rust at your battery's terminal. Clean it with a wire brush and recheck the voltage. If the reading continues to be under 12 volts, then you need to either recharge the battery or replace it with a new one. Test your mower, see if it turns on, And if you're still having problems, then we need to continue with the troubleshooting. Now, to check for any grounding issues with your black cable coming out of your negative terminal in the battery, what you need to do is you set your multimeter to continuity. Okay, you place the black meter probe to the terminal, the negative terminal of the battery, and you place the other one to a grounding bolt. It has to be bare metal, it can't be painted. So let's see if I could hear the beep, because this meter's beep is very low. Okay, so there's continuity. That means this cable is good. If you did not hear that sound or you don't get a reading, that means there is an open wire and you need to replace the cable. All right, so we checked the red battery cable to the solenoid for voltage right here. Okay, and that's the battery cable back there. And we also checked the black battery cable for any grounding issues. Next, we're going to connect the red multimeter probe to the other terminal on the right of the solenoid to check for voltage, right here. And that red wire connected to that terminal goes to your starter, right here. That's the wire. And you're going to place your black multimeter probe onto the negative terminal of the battery. DC volt at 20. You're going to turn the ignition key to the start position. And now we're going to try to see if we could get a reading from this terminal. I'm getting no reading at all. That means that either the solenoid is bad or that there is corrosion underneath the solenoid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start to take this apart, take it out of here, clean it up really good, the grounding area, the metal, and reconnect the solenoid back again and test it again for 12 volts. If we don't get 12 volts, that means your solenoid is bad and you need to replace it. After I went ahead and removed the old solenoid and cleaned it underneath it, checked for any rust or anything like that, and I found nothing, I put it back together and it was still not clicking. It was still not doing anything. It wasn't cranking. So someone suggested that instead of turning the key to the start position like I originally did and then testing it, they said that go ahead and move it to the spring-loaded position as if you were cranking your engine. Move it to that while you're testing for voltage. So I did that, and there was still no click, no engine cranking, nothing. So I will be ordering a new solenoid for this mower later on. Next, we're going to check for voltage at this terminal down here on the 3-pole. If it was a 4-pole solenoid, you would also get it from this side, because remember, this is your ground side. So you will be testing either on a 3-pole or a 4th pole on this terminal here. So what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect this wire. This one pulls up. Okay. This wire here, this terminal, goes to your safety switches. Anything that goes wrong, any readings that go wrong here will mean problems with your safety switches, okay? So what we're going to do is test it to see if we get 12 volts. You're going to set your meter again to DC volt, 20 volts there, and we're going to put the black probe somewhere in a grounding screw. This works better if you have alligator clips. It's make it so much easier. And then you're going to get your red probe and you're going to check it here. You're going to turn your ignition to the start position, and now we're going to check this terminal here, the wiring, and see what voltage we get. We are getting no voltage whatsoever. Now, if you get 12 volts, a reading of 12 volts, that means that most likely all your safety switches and grounding is working perfectly well. But in my case, I got no 12 volts. I got 0 reading. That means there's a problem somewhere with the safety switches. It could be a bad ignition key switch, or it could be a bad ground. And like I said, with a 3-pole, you would have to disconnect this, clean the ground area in the bottom. With a 4-pole, you would need to check for any rust also there, and then just clean up the area, trace the black wire, the grounding wire, all the way up to the mower where it ends, and check for any corrosion there and clean it there, and then recheck and see if you have any readings. So at this point, I have no voltage reading. That means the problem is probably in one of the safety switches. That's the next troubleshooting. And remember to connect your little wire back again. So right now, I'm going to show you, if you do have a 4-pole solenoid, I'm going to show you how to test it. I'm going to tell you how to test it because I don't have a 4-pole solenoid here. This would have been a screw with a black wire attached to it, and the black wire would be attached somewhere in the riding mower to a metal frame. But if you do have the 4-pole solenoid, you're going to have to do another test. For the 4-pole solenoid, you're going to have to check for resistance. And what you do is you put your meter on resistance. Okay. And then you're going to put the wire, or you're going to have to kill the power to the mower. So you're going to have to disconnect your battery cables, disconnect the positive and the negative, and pull it away so we could kill the power on the mower. And then you could check for the resistance. Now, after you set your multimeter to resistance, you're going to take your black probe and you're going to place it on the grounding side of your 4-pole solenoid. And you're going to put the other probe somewhere metal, okay, like for example here, and then you're going to take a reading. If you get 0 ohms when you're checking for resistance, and you get 0 ohms, that means that the black wire is grounded. It's okay, there's no problem. But if you get an infinite resistance reading and it'll say OL on your meter, that means you must find the break in the ground wire and repair it. You're also going to check your fuse, okay? This pops open and you have a 15-amp fuse there. You take it out and you check to see if there's a breakage there. That's one telltale sign of that the fuse had blown. Replace it. You could also check it with a multimeter and see if it's good or not. If you want to check your fuse with a multimeter, you need to set your multimeter to resistance. Grab both leads from your multimeter and touch the terminals on your fuse. If you hear ringing, the fuse is fine. If you don't, replace it. This fuse is fine. Now, if you have a blown fuse, that means there's a short or a breakage in the wiring system, or there could be a problem with one of your components. Fix the problem and your fuse will not blow again. Okay, when I was looking in here for safety switches, the blade safety switch and the brake safety switch, I found this safety switch laying here. And apparently it got unplugged somewhere from in here. I'm gonna disconnect this safety switch. You just pull it out, and then I'm gonna do a continuity test. If the continuity test goes well and the safety switch is fine, I'm gonna go ahead and put it back to where it came from, and I'm gonna try to turn the mower on and see if that was the culprit. To check for continuity, you're gonna set your multimeter on continuity. You move the lever down here, and you're gonna place one probe on one hole, and the other one, you're gonna place it here. Be careful not to touch both probes. And if you hear that beep, that side is working fine without pressing this button here, okay? That's the safety switch. The other side should have, if it's working, should have continuity. You should hear a beep when I press the button, okay? So one side you should hear the ringing without pressing the button, and the other side you should hear the little beep when you press the button. So I'm going to press the button. If it beeps, that means this switch is fine. Okay, I'm pressing the button and you can hear the beep. So this switch is fine. This blade switch is working just fine. So now we're going to locate the brake safety switch. We already know where the blade safety switch is, and this diagram here tells me that the brake safety switch is wired into the blade safety switch. So there are two ways of looking into it. You could either start at your solenoid and follow the orange wire down to the blade safety switch. And then from the blade safety switch, the orange wire comes back out and connects to the brake safety switch. And the safety switch continues with the orange all the way back up to the ignition system. So we just got to find that orange safety switch. So I started at this connection here, the orange connection, and I pulled gently the wires, and I found that this orange wire was connected or wrapped around this wire harness. This wire harness goes that way, and it also goes up to the ignition switch. So I'm going to trace it from the ignition switch or from the blade safety switch. So we're gonna go back out. Let's see, it's kind of tight in here to get cameras. Okay, I'm having a hard time. All right, this is that wire, that harness that comes from the front. And I found that it leads to the blade safety switch and back out, and the orange wires then goes into this little sleeve protection. So we have the little sleeve, and there's your blade safety switch. So what you're going to do is you're going to disconnect it and test it like we did with the blade safety switch. Then pop it back in there. And we're going to test the mower. Okay, so we found where the blade safety switch was and the brake safety switch. Now to find the other safety switches that are in at the back of the mower, you could use your diagram again, and you will find that the safety switches, one is the seat safety switch, and the other one is the reverse sensor safety switch. They're also tied together by a black wire. So I know where the seat safety switch is. Right there. And then I took the battery out to find the other one because they're both connected. Okay, I found it. And it's right there. Right there. I guess you can go from here. Yes, you can disconnect the safety switch from the seat from in here. Right there. So they're easily accessible. Okay, the next thing we're going to test is the ignition key switch, and the way you take it out is pull the key out. This little rubber thing comes out. Okay. Then you're going to get an adjustable wrench, and you're going to take this off counterclockwise. That unscrews off. Then once you take that part out, you just push this down into the hole, and you could pull your ignition switch from inside, just behind the gas tank. Then you just disconnect it from its harness, and you test it with a multimeter. I'm going to go briefly over that. I'm not going to take mine out because I already found out where the problem lies on my mower. Okay, here I'll be briefly going over how to test your ignition key switch. Now, this particular key switch did not come from my mower because, like I said, I already found out what the problem was, so there was no need to take out my key switch. This is an old key switch that I had laying around. It doesn't work, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to be using this one. My key switch has 7 terminals. This one only has 5. Yours might be different than this, but they're all basically the same. And what you're going to be looking at, you're going to put your key, okay, in its position here. Once you take it out of your mower, which I already showed you how to do that. And you're going to keep this on the off position, okay? That's the off position. You can tell by this little slots here, okay? So this test that I'm going to do, and you're going to see it on the diagram that I'm going to be posting after this little clip, because we're going to be testing the magneto and the ground, all right? How do you know where to put your probes, your meter probes? Okay, each one of these little terminals has a letter stamped on it that belongs to that. So the S stands for solenoid, okay, right here. The M for magneto, which belongs to that terminal there. The B is for battery. And the G, stamped right there to this terminal, is for ground. So what I'm going to be doing is, to give you an example, I'm going to be checking the ground and the magneto. Okay, where the M is at, right here. And I'm going to use my multimeter. You're going to set your multimeter on continuity, okay, right there. And you're going to use your probes. It doesn't matter which color you use. You could use the black on either one and the red on either one, okay? But you're going to use both. I went and got some alligator clips because it's easier for me to just grasp this like that. Otherwise, if you don't have alligator clips, you could place your probes through these little holes here. Just make sure you don't touch all the other terminals when you're putting your probes here. And you put one probe here on the ground and the other one on the magneto right here, and test it. But you need to keep your key switch to off on this test. So I'm going to put my alligator clip on the G. Make sure it doesn't touch the other terminals. And the other one, I'm going to place it on the magneto. You hear that? Okay, so your magneto and your ground, it's fine. Then you could go on to the next test, And let's say you want to check your battery and your solenoid, okay? You're going to place your key on the start position, okay? And you're going to put one multimeter on the B for battery, which is right here. Not touching the other terminals, okay? And you're going to put the other one on the S for the solenoid. Okay, no beeping. So that will tell you right there that this switch is bad and you need to replace it. And you could go and do all this testing with every one of them according to your diagram. You're going to see the diagram after this, and you'll see where to put, you know, which combinations you need to use and in what position do you need to keep your key. So that's basically it. So there were two things wrong with this mower. The first one was the solenoid that was bad, and I went ahead and bought one and replaced it. And the second thing that was wrong with it was the blade safety switch that was knocked out somehow, and it was laying there at the bottom. And once I reconnected it, the mower clicked on and everything was working. I replaced the solenoid with this one here. I ordered it online, and it seems to be working fine now. Nothing's wrong with it. I hope this video helps you, and I thank you for watching.